Shaman tank. That's right. Shamans can tank. I'm living proof of it. I have a hardcore shaman level 60. I have a whole guide if you're really interested, and this is the first video you're seeing somehow. I have a guide for shamans tanking levels 1 through 30. That is the starter pack beginner's guide. I talk about all talents and rotation, abilities, gear, all that stuff, just the absolute basics of this. And now what I'm going to do is branch this off into everything, getting you the rest of the way, and then end game tanking. And yes, that's also possible. I've tanked every single dungeon all the way through to the end and pretty much pre-bissed out my shaman. So this is a full talent focused guide talking about every single talent you could ever want to do. And one of the things I love about shaman talents is there is some choice. There is some customization. There's not just this cookie cutter, you have to do this. You have some options. You have some, if you want more threat, do you want more mitigation? As you get better gear, maybe you don't care for mitigation as much, and you can afford to go for all threat because your gear is fine enough and you don't have to take certain talents. The customization's there, and I really love it. So we are going to be talking about leveling up from 30 all the way to 60. That's going to be your leveling talents. Then dungeons, like just regular level 60 dungeon build, a raiding build. Yes, a raiding build. A main tank build. That's crazy. And a hybrid healer build that I've never seen anybody talk about. I've tried it out. It actually does work. It's pretty cool. But here we go. The refresher from the 1 through 30 guide. These are the talents for leveling. We're starting off with leveling. These talents for leveling are what you always do. There is no deviation from this. You always do 5 points here. This talent is hot garbage. It is not much mana at all, especially since we are not elemental or restoration and we have a lot of intelligence to make this percentage of mana gain more. It's terrible. So nope, pretty much never put points into this except for that last little hybrid healer thing I'm going to talk about. And then you obviously get 5 points into Thundering Strikes. The only caveat here is while leveling, since this is what we're talking about, you do put 2 points into Ghost Wolf. The flow of that, though, to remind yourself, is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you put 2 into Ghost Wolf, because then this is when you get at level 20. It's a weird thing shamans have to do so that you have 2 out of 2 points at level 20. So this requires level 20. This is what you'll look like at level 20. Then you finish off your crit and you go down here and you put 3 points into that to get Flurry. Absolutely huge talent for these two are huge for threat, for damage, for leveling. It's just absolutely massive. You'll feel like a way better whenever these both come online, mainly Flurry. And then you get Parry. That is as far as we got in the level 30 build. There is no deviation from this. This is the best option. The dodge chance straight up is better than the armor, especially early on when you're wearing leather and you haven't got mail yet. And this is it does make you take less damage. Guardian Totems does reduce the damage you take, but you're not dropping totems a whole bunch while leveling. And in dungeons, a lot of times you don't necessarily have the mana for it, especially whenever early on you don't really need to, because you can tank absolutely fine. And it only gets harder towards the 40s, which we'll talk about. So this is what you look like every time at level 30 while leveling. Now, next points, I would put them into the 3 points into this to get your rock biter attack power up on your rock. All you use is rock biter, so no reason not to put your points into rock biter. And at this point now, we're level 33. Things still aren't that hard, hitting us too terribly hard as far as dungeons go. We're able to have mail gear is going to be starting to come online later, level 40. But you're not getting hit too hard because the mobs are still lower level, so you're fine. So 3 points into this, you're still good. And here's where you do kind of have a little bit of wiggle room here. You can, if you don't care about taking less damage, you can put some points into improved lightning shield. There is a little bit lightning shield in general, and searing totem, their fire totem that shoots fire. Those are your most efficient damage per mana point, which is valuable during leveling. While you're leveling, mana gets tight. It is very efficient damage per mana to have your lightning shield up. So this is possible. I personally would say 1 point into anticipation because it's going to help you level by taking less damage. And if you're tanking dungeons still, like we're whole thing we're doing here, I would go 1 point in anticipation to then be able to weapon mastery 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously, 10% is more damage with all those freaking auto attacks, and it stacks with the whole rock biter thing we just did, and it's a ton of threat as far as your auto attacks and stuff. So that's pretty obvious. And then we get a very nice quality of life here with Storm Strike. Storm Strike, it is another attack. It just literally attacks the target for your offhand. Offhand. You don't have an offhand. It's a shield. It just gives a full-blown attack. In general, shaman weapons, you want to have very fast weapons. So yes, having a fast auto-attacking dagger or something like that is your best bet. The only caveat to that is it is nice sometimes. If you do accidentally somehow have a slow 2-second plus weapon, it does make your Storm Strikes hit harder, which is nice in some ways. But ultimately, Storm Strike is a huge mana cost investment. So while leveling, I pretty much don't use Storm Strike while leveling. And we're kind of talking about leveling right now. Straight up leveling, Storm Strike is, you can burst down people with it. You can do a Storm Strike. Puts a nature damage debuff where it takes 20% increased nature damage. You can do that. You're going to yourself on a mob, but maybe if you do a pack of 2 and you burst down the first one, and then you can kind of go slow and steady on the second one. It is useful. Just don't spam it all the time because you will go out of mana very quickly and it'll slow down your overall leveling pace. But in dungeons, oh my gosh, this is going to feel amazing. So now when you do a dungeon pack, I will do a separate video on like pulls and all this kind of stuff, but you have another auto attack cooldown on command. It's a 20-second cooldown. So on a big pack of 4, you're going to pull the pack of 4. Also at this point, you'll have chain lightning. You get chain lightning for pulls at level 32. So you'll be able to do a lightning bolt, chain lightning pull, hitting 4 things. They'll be running at you. You'll be able to auto attack, down-ranked Earth Shock, and Storm Strike. Boom, boom, boom on 3 different targets as far as AoE threats concerned. Absolute game changer as far as the quality of life on tanking multiple things. Not only can you auto attack targets and tab auto attack and tab, rank down ranked Earth Shocks to kind of keep the threat spread around, you now also have a Storm Strike. It is very nice. Again, lots of mana, so be careful with that. But anyway, that is 31 points. Here's where a lot of people can be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to go and get excited with Elemental or Restoration. We will talk about branching off into each of these, but we got to stay focused in enhancement. The big thing you have to understand is as we're level 40, every level we keep increasing, the mobs are going to be hitting harder and harder to the point where they get towards in-game level hitting. The game is thinking you're going to be hitting a plate warrior with all these things. You got to be sure to protect yourself. This is when it starts to matter, especially Sunken Temple. So careful with that. But this is level Uldaman is going to be the first dungeon where you're, as a shaman, you have to really pay attention. Here we go. And see how you're taking damage. How good is your gear? This is where you got to start paying attention to your talents, because at Uldaman, you do not have the rest of your tanking talents. You do not have toughness yet. You just got mail armor. So maybe you still have a few leather pieces and you haven't got all switched over to mail yet, right? So be careful. Be careful. You need 5 points in toughness, all 5 points in anticipation, and while leveling, unless you have super crazy gear, you also do want to pick up Guardian Totems. These 3 are your trifecta of tanking talents that you don't have yet. Obviously shield specialization, obviously parry, but you do want to fill these out. So at level 40, I would say you for sure go, you finish out anticipation and you get that. And now you're good there. Okay, nice. And you are still now building in towards level 45 is the last in Uldaman. The last boss is level 45. So I probably wouldn't tank that unless you're like 43, 44, or 45 to be safe. And you still don't have toughness yet. So if you're wanting to be tanking dungeons earlier, then go ahead and I would put all 5 points into toughness, especially now that you have mail gear, which comes online at level 40. You will be able to actually benefit from this much more now. And then 2 points into here. So now, and you're like, oh, but what about lightning shield? You talked about, if you really don't care about, like, you're like, oh no, my gear's totally fine. Oh no, I don't need this. My gear's totally fine. Sure, you could put more points into here for more efficient leveling, or if you're really not tanking dungeons that often yet, this is more efficient for leveling wise. But at this point, as far as leveling goes, you'd be more efficient taking some talents over here. But we're talking about tanking. So I would not put points here. I would fill this all the way out and fill this all the way out. And now I'm level 48 and I have every single tanking talent I could have to reduce the damage I take in enhancement. There is one more over here we'll talk about in a second, elemental warding. We will be picking up that. But 39 points all in there at 48 gives us the ability to stay alive, tanking dungeons, entering into the 50s. You got to have all of this I would be very dangerous if you didn't have all 3 of these maxed out to tank as a shaman, at least in hardcore. If you want to risk it, you can, but especially if you haven't gotten some good drops and your gear's not up to par. So now that we have this, we're level 48. Now we can start thinking like, okay, where do I want to start putting some other points into now? I would now dip over into here. Personally, I care about dungeon tanking, surviving, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go pick up Improved Lightning Shield. And also, for the record, if you didn't know this, Lightning Shield does not give you threat. If it did give you threat, I'd instantly be putting points in this every single time. Lightning Shield does not give you threat at all. It gives you 0 threat. I promise you. You can look it up on some things. I learned this more recently. So that is another reason why I'm not picking this up if you've been confused by that. So now I go over here. This is a huge quality of life improvement. Convection, 10% reduction in mana cost of all of your shocks and lightning and chain lightning. So on pull, it's when you do your pulls, it costs less mana. When you shock, it does less mana. This is a very, very good talent. Do not do this. We are not an elemental shaman. We don't have a huge amount of plus spell damage to gear. This is not good. Very, very situationally. I pretty much never would use this. There's only one situation, which we'll talk about in raiding, kind of. But in raiding, you'll be putting points over here, which we'll talk about too. So yeah, you get this. Also then, I would put, while leveling, I'm level 53 now, you put 2 points into Earth's Grasp. I've been debating on this and, I don't know about this, do I have this? Or maybe we can go pick up to do more damage with fire totems and stuff. Earth's Grasp is solid in 2 ways. One, it does increase your Stoneclawed Totem's health by a lot. Anytime I do a pull of 5 or 6 more, especially when there's like non-elites and a bunch of little like wolves or a bunch of things running around, you do a line of sight pull, group them all up, and have a Stoneclaw Totem down. It's pulsing threat out in an 8-yard radius around it, right? It's going to be your little mini off tank for a second. It's going to soak a few hits. It's like an extra little health bar. It's nice to keep off the healer. It is a nice quality of life if you can know when to use your Stoneclawed Totem. I don't use it all the time, but it is nice for the times where you do need to use it. And the second part, don't sleep on the second part, increase the radius of your Earthbind Totem by 20%. This is very nice for leveling. It's very nice for getting the heck out of dungeons. Whenever shit hits the fan and you got to get out, Earthbind Totem, it's a great talent to have, especially whenever like your life's on the line and like some bad things are happening. Talents that come really useful when bad things are happening. I think this is a good pickup for even just safety of your character. So that is a good one to pick up there too. Then I'm level 55 now. Now we can finally pick up these 3 points. It is nice. Fire damage, frost damage, nature damage. You do take those. Lots of times casters, a lot of times tanks get really messed up by this. You actually take less damage from spells than them. That's actually kind of nice. And then this is amazing. Elemental Focus. You will get it at level 59. You'll wish you had it sooner. Oh, I wish I had it sooner. What if I take some points out of enhancement and get an Elemental Focus sooner? Cool. That would be very nice, but you might die. That would be my warning to you, is you would not be able to pick up toughness, all fill out anticipation and guardian totems. You would not be able to have that trifecta. You could get this earlier, absolutely. But this is something you earn at 59, cool. And then at 60, I don't care where you put your last point because you're gonna be respecking anyway. So now we're gonna be resetting everything, and we're level 60, and you want to go tank some dungeons. Awesome. Here's what this looks like. In fact, here's my, I can just go over. Oh, I already did that one. Okay, so here's this is the dungeon tanking build that I run. It is my, I think this is the best dungeon tanking run you could have, especially while you've just hit 60, you don't have a ton of gear yet, and you want to load this out. I think this is absolutely awesome. Now, how this would look, well, I mean, I don't really have to how this would look. I will build it out just once for you guys. So you obviously do this every time. You no longer need Ghost Wolf anymore as far as that goes. If you want to, like, for open world and you want to keep it for that, okay. If you want to put 1 point in here because you want to wield two-handed weapons, fine. Okay, those are just your own choice, quality of life things for you playing the game. Go for it. I am all in dungeon tanking, so you obviously do this every single time. You obviously do this every single time. You do this every single time. This every single time. And that is like the standard, like I gotta do that every time. Now, especially when you have lower gear, you gotta do this every time too. That's a no-brainer. You have to. And then I put 3 points into this, and then I'm like, okay, well, I have this one extra point now, and I need to get Storm Strike. This is good for threat. But honestly, threat is not an issue unless the boss has some sort of threat drop mechanic, which I'll have a whole video on how to handle those situations. But your threat is godlike. In my opinion, warriors or shamans with same gear deal more threat than warriors, at least in the early phases. Obviously, when we start getting towards like AQ40 and Nax, they're geared out of the teeth and they just do crazy damage. That I would say I don't know, because if you have a lot of plus damage and you use some trinkets and other things, I think shamans could hang. But especially now in like the molten core level tiers, shaman's threat is unparalleled. I think they have the absolute best threat. So this is super awesome right here. Just to do 1 point in there, you don't need all of them because your threat is fine, and a lot of it comes from earth shock and stuff anyway. So this is what the 31 points looks like for me as I'm building this from like a priority standpoint. And then I would shift over to here and obviously pick this up. For what I just said about getting the heck out of there. Even in dungeons, you might have to roach out and get the heck out of there. Go back, get your group, drop the totem down so the enemies you can slow the enemies down for your group as y'all get the heck out of there. And then 3 points here, 1 point here, all 5 points here. A lot of times newer shamans will be like, oh, this is really nice. This is really nice. This is really offensive spell crits increase your chance to get a critical strike with melee attacks by 9%. So when you get a spell crit, it increases your melee crit. And if you crit, you'll have flurry procs more. It's amazing. I agree. It's amazing. But you have terrible gear. And until you're like molten core gear or like above, and you start to get like ZG AQ20 type gear and like better, and you have some more intelligence, you don't have enough spell crit for this to really matter. If you do a pull with a low rank lightning bolt and a chain lightning, yeah, you can actually get a chance to have like 4 different times where you could possibly crit, and you could start the fight off with a crit. It is kind of nice in that way, and that is a genuine playstyle option you could pick up if you really like getting that extra little burst of crit at the beginning, or if you have a little bit more intelligence, stuff like that. Absolutely possible there, but early on when your gear's terrible, nope, I don't do that. You have 4 points left, so I put all 4 points into this, is where that comes from. And now it cleans. It's a very nice and clean talent tree right here. But there you go. If you are scared and worried, or you have terrible gear, you got to level 60 barely, and you have no gear at all, I could see yourself taking 2 points out of this and putting it in here. That is possible, to keep yourself alive even a bit longer. And maybe if your gear is not good and you haven't got a lot of gear on the way up, you probably should do that until you get some good trinkets and some good other items that keep yourself alive a bit more. So there's that. That is the dungeon tanking. And then once you get a little bit tankier, okay, cool, you can put this into this. And this is what I run right now for dungeon tanking. It's awesome. But what if you want to raid? You say you want to raid? Let's go raiding here. So this is the raid setup. There's 37 points over here, 14 over here. I'm not going to go and point by point build it back out. The reason why this is the raid setup is this talent right here, Nature's Guidance. Nature's Guidance is huge. It's insane. I think it's absolutely terrible on Blizzard's part to put this talent here. I'm going to rant on that for a second. Why on earth would you put a 3% to hit and 3% to hit on spells and melee? So that's like 6% worth of hit in one talent. It's crazy. 1% for spells, 1% for melee, all 3 points. That's crazy. Why would you bury it in restoration on tier 3? It should be at minimum first or second tier in restoration. I get putting it in here, but you have to just pick up so much garbage that doesn't even do anything for damage or tanking here. This is maybe kind of nice. Reduce the mana cost of your totem by 25%. Sure. I would personally switch these two, but anyway, reducing the mana cost of your totems by 25% is genuinely nice. It is a quality of life improvement. A lot of times you can drop totems before boss pulls anyway, so maybe that's not as nice, but you got to take these to get to this thing. And then reduce the mana cost of healing spells. If it's choosing between two terrible options, usually whenever you heal as a shaman tank, you're going to do lesser healing wave, just a faster version. You're not going to do regular healing wave. And if you do a 0.5 seconds, is not going to cut that much time off, because usually when you cast this heal, it's not in a high stakes situation. And then totem mastery, you're in a raid, you're trying to get the group, you're trying to make sure that your group has wind fury, you're trying to make sure your group has all your restoration totems or healing time, whatever you want to be dropping. Having this make sure that your raid group gets it. is possibly important there. You're probably going to be dropping Wind Fury for whatever group melee group you're in, so you want to make sure they all get it. That's just a really nice quality of life, honestly. Very, very nice quality of life. There is a version of a leveling spec that I did that I respec'd while leveling, and I picked these 14 points up and then pumped out the rest in enhancement. You're not able to pick up toughness and these other things, so it's a bit risky, but man, for leveling was this nice. The actual hit, I hit all the time on leveling mobs, and I could actually drop totems and do pulls within the range of my totem instead of having to always run back to my totems. So side note for leveling, this could be fun if you wanted to put 14 points into here and then fill this out as best you can from there. But yeah, this is the rating spec here. You don't, everything else is pretty self-explanatory. You get all your totems in here. So even as an off tank, because you'll most likely not be the main tank, is as far as this goes, dropping this totem is going to be good for your main tank if you're in that group, and or your raid might want to put you in enhanced totems for your strength of earth. So they might want you to put these two down into here. But that is the build for raid tanking, especially with needing this situation right here. In a raid, you're not going to be needing Earth's Grasp. This could be nice as far as that goes for damage. And if you have enough hit, if you can get some more hit on your gear, but spell hit's really hard to find. Spell hit's very, very hard to find, especially for shaman tanks. So that's not really as worth it. This is nice for mana, but the fights probably won't last as long until you can empty your mana bar anyway, so you probably don't need these over here. This is nice for threat, to be able to pump out that much threat, to be able to get one more second off as far as that goes. But again, I'd still say threat is not a problem for shamans, especially as long as the boss doesn't have a threat wipe in some way. So there's that. And then main tank. This is a bit of a crazy concept here. But when I say main tank, this is a cooldown. This gives you a oh shit button to be able to press. The caveat with the main tank is you do not have Storm Strike. And Storm Strike is going to be definitely lowers your threat because it's another attack you can do and give yourself the nature damage instance of being able to max rank Earth Shock. So maybe your burst threat will be a little bit lower from that. But overall, your Storm Strike buff is going to be consumed by hunters doing nature damage, other shamans, druids, whatever, doing nature damage. So you're probably not going to benefit as much from your Storm Strike there. But it's also going to save you some mana because you're not going to be using it as much. So you have more mana for Earth Shocks. So I'm not too terribly worried about this as far as threat goes, but then you also lose this on threat. So this is definitely less threat. And so when I say main tank, you could say maybe not main tank, you could say mitigation tank. This is much more mitigation focused because you pick up some crazy stuff over here, 21 points in restoration. You still get all the nice benefits I talked about with all the 14 points here. You get 14 points. In fact, I will show you this one. You get 14 points here, like we just talked about. And then you have one more point to throw around. You obviously can't do improved reincarnation because that's doesn't even exist in hardcore. You don't want less threat on healing. So it's either lower the casting time by 0.1 second, which will you even notice that? So I put 1 point in here just because if you are having to heal and something's on you, it have less pushback. And then you have a genuine choice here between 1% chance to crit on healing and lightning spells or your totems. This is a 5% chance to crit on lightning spells, which is essentially your chain lightning and lightning bolt, which is very situational at the beginning of a pull, possibly nice. And if you do heal yourself, it is nice to have a 5% higher chance to crit. So I guess that's nice. I went for the more stable. Your healing totem and your mana spring totem are 25% better. That's pretty nice and will be better for mitigation because you will be getting, if you drop healing stream, you'll be getting more casual healing on yourself, even if you're doing this in dungeons or something, tanking a UBRS, tanking Drac, or whoever. And then you get 1 point into a nature swiftness. This is clutch and hardcore. I have ran this setup in Dona Dungeon, and I've seen someone about to die. I was tanking, and you can nature swiftness that person. Sometimes that might give you more time to get aggro back. Sometimes if things are going crazy and somebody's accidentally body pulled and all this stuff and they're going to die, you can nature swiftness heal them. It is actually a kind of a clutch move and feels kind of fun too. And you can also do it for yourself. If you get really low, you can nature swiftness yourself, obviously. like a tanking cooldown. So that's another possible thing here. And then now that we're kind of out in the wilderness here, I do want to talk about this crazy build. I have done this. I've messed around with this. This is kind of weird. I've never seen anybody talk about this, but I have ran this before, and it's kind of weird. But it's 30 points in restoration. And here's what the build is. You can imagine yourself. I'm not going to talk about this one for long, but basically you are a healer tank. You have all of the tanking and cooldowns. If you look at this, I have every single tank cooldown, every single talent that could possibly make me take less damage. I have them all. I've collected them all. I even put 3 points into that terrible thing because you kind of have to, because I don't care about damage for crits. I don't care about anything. I am pure mitigation. Pure mitigation. That's all this build is kind of focused on. I don't care about threat. I don't care about damage. All I care about is mitigation. A good example would be Golemag in Molten Core has 2 hounds that you don't kill. You kill the boss and then these despawn. So tanking these dogs, no one's attacking them. You just have to take as little damage as possible. This is a great build for that, because there's some other crazy things. You get a lot of stuff over here. And yes, here I did choose to take the reduced casting time of Healing Wave, and I have Ancestral Healing, and I have Healing Way. So an interesting thing you can do, this lasts for 15 seconds, keep in mind. You can downrank Healing Wave down to rank 1, get it down to a 1 second cast, and do 1, 2, 3 before the pull starts on yourself. You can pre-Healing Way yourself to have this healing buff on yourself, to run in there and be able, and possibly crit yourself. And if you crit yourself, you have 25% more armor for 15 seconds. So at the start of it, you can even bait it. You can even bait it out to where you keep casting it until you get a proc of this crit, and then start the pull with a 15-second buff of 25% more armor. That's kind of crazy. And you'll be able to heal yourself for better as well, and it stacks. And then you're in the fight with more armor, and you can start auto-attacking the boss and stuff like this. This would be terrible for AoE threat because you don't have any auto-attack crits. Your Rock Biter's not as good. Your weapon damage sucks. You don't have Storm Strike. This is literally like I'm tanking a boss, And ran in there. You have the extra bonus here. You have your Nature Swiftness tank cooldown healing button. You have more heals from your heals, and you can actually auto-attack Earth Shock, tank the boss. And then if your health gets low, you can heal yourself because you have Healing Focus. And you can literally be tanking a boss and casting heals on yourself, which might sound crazy. And while you're channeling, you're not able to, I think, dodge and parry and stuff like that. But you're going to take more hit, but you just heal up the damage anyway. So I've tanked this before. With a boss that it was a single target boss. I didn't have to AoE anything, and so I switched specs over to this. You can auto attack the boss. Your threat's going to be absolutely fine because you're a shaman and you have earth shocks and auto attacks, and you're good. Even without all this stuff, you're probably good, unless you have some crazy pumping warrior or something like that in the group with Wind Fury procs and all this craziness. But yeah, as long as you have threat. The healer starts to go low on mana, you're fine. You just heal yourself, which you'll own yourself pretty quickly. But anyway, it's just a fun little build. Don't take this one too seriously. So again, this is your raiding setup. This is your dungeon setup. And you're in a pretty good spot. And if you really like the quality of life from this, you can do dungeons with this as well. Absolutely no problem there. And there you go. I hope this was helpful. Full-blown Shaman talent breakdown. Good luck.